B2B buyers like to be anonymous. They don't want to, talk to a seller, especially not when they're doing their research, right? We've all heard that stat of roughly 70% of a buyer's journey happens before they actually reach out and engage specifically with a seller. And so that makes it even more important to be top of mind, front and center, helping bring those buyers along the journey when they are focused on doing their own research, either anonymously or through, reaching out to their peers or, looking at competitive review sites. And 6sense really enables you to do that. And then finally, B2B buyers are also, we talked about fragmented, we talked about anonymous. They're also resistant. They kind of know what they want and they want to, get to that answer on their own. And so we've got this B2B buying study on our website where we conduct this every couple years to show by the time a buyer does reach out and speak to a seller, they pretty much know exactly what they want, but also they've pretty much decided on who they want to buy it from. And maybe they'll have a list of top 3 vendors, maybe it'll be 1 or 2, but what we found is over 80% of the time, the first vendor that they reach out to and speak to is the one they end up going with.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Lee with the E-Marketing Association. Most of my week, most of my day job time is spent running Did It, 50-person digital first marketing agency, but we do traditional as well, including some cool stuff with direct mail. B2B is a huge category for us. It's actually the largest under Did It. I also own Truth Nutrition, which is a place I run marketing experiments that none of the Did It clients are insane enough to let me run. So I run them there. And I run a nonprofit, Giving Forward. I'm super excited to be chatting with Saima Rashid today. She's the SVP of Marketing and Revenue Analytics at 6sense. For those folks who don't know what 6sense is, what's the current elevator pitch, Saima?
I love that you've positioned it that way. The current elevator pitch, I mean, at the end of the day, 6sense was started over 10 years ago to answer a pretty simple question. If we only knew who is in market for what we're looking to sell, wouldn't our job as sellers and marketers be so much easier, right? If we only just knew who was in market. And, over the past 10 years, 6sense has answered that question of who is in market and who you should be talking to. But it's also answered, more around that. Why are they in market? What specific topics, pain points are they looking to solve? How do they like to be spoken to? Who in the buying team should you be reaching out to, right? And how and why? And so it really has evolved over the past 10 years into this one-stop shop for marketers and sellers looking to really make an impact on the B2B side.
Great. Well, one of the hypotheses in account-based marketing or ABM is this idea that there's probably a lot of internal influencers and committees and that there's no one decision maker, particularly as you go further and further into the enterprise, but potentially even in the mid-market, that the more complex the B2B buying decision, the more likely it is that a lot of folks are going to be involved. And also the sales cycle maybe much longer, where people are engaged in research activity prior to creating a list of considered options. So how have you guys dealt with that evolution from sort of the single decision maker to the idea that there's a lot of folks we need to talk to?
Yeah. So because 6sense is a B2B platform, it really has been built for the way B2B buyers buy. And to your point, a B2B buying group is fragmented. And in fact, we've been tracking this for so many years. And what we see is this concept of B2B inflation, where maybe if it took, 5 people on average to make a decision 4 years ago, that number is now 15, 20, 25, depending on, the size of company and the complexity of the deal that you're selling. And so it's getting harder and you need to really involve many more people. But beyond just the fragmented nature of B2B buying and selling, there's a couple other factors at play, right? B2B buyers like to be anonymous. They don't want to, talk to a seller, especially not when they're doing their research, right? We've all heard that stat of roughly 70% of a buyer's journey happens before they actually reach out and engage specifically with a seller. And so that makes it even more important to be top of mind, front and center, helping bring those buyers along the journey when they are focused on doing their own research, either anonymously or through, reaching out to their peers or, looking at competitive review sites. And 6sense really enables you to do that. And then finally, B2B buyers are also, we talked about fragmented, we talked about anonymous. They're also resistant. They kind of know what they want and they want to, get to that answer on their own. And so we've got this B2B buying study on our website where we conduct this every couple years to show by the time a buyer does reach out and speak to a seller, they pretty much know exactly what they want, but also they've pretty much decided on who they want to buy it from. And maybe they'll have a list of top 3 vendors, maybe it'll be 1 or 2, but what we found is over 80% of the time, the first vendor that they reach out to and speak to is the one they end up going with. And so that initial anonymous part of the research is so crucial in the B2B buying journey.
That's a great point. I mean, one of the other things that's unique to B2B marketing is if you start to use the behavior that you just described, right? The KPIs are not your, typical last touch KPIs. You have to be really thinking much more holistic. So when you help clients or just at conferences, when you're educating people on how to structure their success metric KPIs to truly reflect the buying journey of their prospects, what are some things that come up as best practices?
Yeah, I think so. I am an analytics nerd. I am a data nerd. I'm in there all day, and so I have thoughts on this. And I would say 20 years of my career really has been built on B2B marketing analytics and sales analytics and what works. Because to be honest, let's just find out the patterns that work and let's do more of those things, and let's not do the things that aren't working, right? In terms of measurement, there's a whole slew of KPIs you would look at from the top of funnel all the way through to then pipeline and bookings. But it always starts with the ICP, right? Who is that core group of accounts that you could and should be selling to? Because we all have limited budgets. We all have limited capacity. And so really refining your target audience and that ideal customer profile and making sure that every single dollar that you're spending is only focused on those accounts that matter. At the end of the day, let's minimize waste and let's focus in on those accounts that we care about. And so understanding your ICP, right? Quantifying it, how many accounts are there, making sure that you are reaching that ICP, making sure that you are driving engagement from them. And, a KPI right at the top obviously could be something like what portion of your web traffic is from your ICP accounts, right? You could have doubled or tripled your web traffic. If it's not the right accounts, who cares? And so ICP web traffic is a really top of funnel metric that we look at, and 6sense makes it easy for you to measure that. And then it's, of course, how many accounts are engaged, and then how many accounts are moving through that funnel of, early awareness through to, consideration, decision, and purchase. Because if you knew that an account was just beginning their research, you would speak to them very differently than you would to an account that is maybe actively comparing you to your competitors, right? And so understanding where that ICP fits in terms of their intent stage. And then, of course, measuring things like movement of accounts through those stages, which specific tactics are helping move those accounts through those stages, right? And then there's, of course, specific KPIs around the tactics you're using. Is it display? Is it nurture? Are your sellers engaging and reaching those accounts? What is the response time? How many touches are they hitting? Are they multi-threading into that account? Because we know it takes, many more people to close a deal than, just 1 or 2. Are you multi-threading? Who are you multi-threading into? What are the, opportunity creation rates? And then, of course, you get into those bottom of funnel metrics like opportunity creation, conversion, stage progression, and then eventually winning. So a whole slew of metrics that could be a whole episode on its own, Kevin, but really considering that entire journey as opposed to only honing in on maybe some early stage top of funnel metrics that don't show business impact, but show, early signs. And then also including those lagging indicators of opportunity creation and progression. It really has to be a mix of both. And then finally, I would say that my favorite analysis is when you have won deals, and this is an analysis everyone should really be doing every quarter. Let's go look at those closed won deals and look at what touch points helped us get to them. Because again, let's just focus our efforts on those as opposed to trying to boil the ocean.
Those are all excellent points. One thing I like to do with B2B clients and prospects and just folks I meet that where we're having sort of the deep dive conversations is try to then dissect the ICP into multiple segments, right? Because sometimes salespeople will chase the easy close, right? And
Or
the
the
easy
big logo,
close.
the big shiny logo.
Well, I mean, you've got the whales, the tuna, and then nobody lives on the minnows because they're too small, but they may look like the ICP at the surface, right? So I think part of the analysis that I find really fun is not just look at LTV of an account, which is super important, right? But how easy is it going to be to close? Is the sales cycle going to be, longer, and is it going to be a different sales cycle? Because if you only do whale hunting, you could end up with a much, much longer sales cycle, right? So you probably need to think about your ICP in clusters where there might be some mid-market accounts that, all right, maybe they're not, they're not the whales, but they are the tuna, and we can feed the village on the tuna while we whale hunt, right? And finding
There
that
you go.
balance between sort of understanding the nuances of the ICPs, like X and above in revenue or X and above in predicted revenue is great. But finding that balance within your ICPs can be really, really important. Any KPIs or any processes or strategies that you find useful in focusing efforts and energies that way?
Yes. We obsess about our ICP at 6sense. I can tell you that. I have a cross-functional team that meets every 2 weeks, believe it or not, to review it and refine it. And we take it a step further. I mean, you made a great point about, not just looking at the whales, but also at, the different sized accounts. I take it a step further and actually look to see which accounts are we actually renewing and expanding a year, 2 years down the road. Let's build that into the ICP criteria, right? Because we don't want to just get the early sell or the easy sell and then end up selling churn, right? So we take the full sort of renewal look and expansion look into our ICP definition as well. And so we've got things, of course, like size, like you mentioned, in revenue range, geographies, right? All those important characteristics around your ICP. But we look at things like tech fit, right? Which companies look best like the types of companies we should be selling to? Are there specific industries or verticals that we should be doing, honing in on more because those are the ones that work well? And then, of course, we look at the ICP by company size as well, right? Our go-to-market motion is commercial, enterprise, and strategic. And so I do have an ICP for each of those as well. So we've got the macro ICP and then the enterprise, commercial, and strategic versions of those, because again, that's what allows us to execute against it. Maybe the messaging that we would put to a commercial account of like 250 employees would be different than it would for a 2,000 size, right? And so having those different viewpoints, but also taking the longer term view into the ICP is really helpful, particularly in a SaaS landscape where, it's not just about landing, it is about renewing and making those customers successful. And then finally, I would say, once you've got that ICP, it needs to be ubiquitous and really, out there in terms of your sellers know who your ICP is, the marketers know who your ICP is, the entire company needs to be rallied around that. And for us, 6sense is the source of truth for the ICP. One segment that everyone knows, this is, the source of truth, and we will run and execute marketing campaigns against it. We will push that data point into Salesforce so that as sellers work accounts, they know that this is part of the ICP. We will use it in our prioritization of accounts that we're passing to sellers and leads that we're passing to sellers. So really, it's not just enough to set it up and do it well, but how do you make sure it's permeating the process? Because that's what will make sure that it is being used, and is what will make sure that you are scaling all of your efforts from a marketing and sales motion around that best set of accounts. And ABM, at the end of the day, whether you call it account-based marketing or the account-based experience, because it really is beyond marketing, it's about focusing the entire revenue team on the most winnable accounts. And the way to do that is really refine that ICP and then make sure everyone knows it and is using it.
Some really great points. I do love the fact that it goes beyond most winnable, and that when you're calculating LTV, right, you're not just calculating LTV based on the original revenue times the number of months or years that they hang around, but also cross-sell and upsell, right?
Yeah.
Because the number that's on the original proposal may not necessarily be the number that you see 2, 3 years down the road. And understanding from a lookalike modeling perspective what those folks look like that are
Absolutely.
sticky and tend to increase revenue, that's super powerful. I'd love to get your perspective on something that we've had to change on the did it side for our B2B clients post-pandemic, which is obviously you're selling both to the account, but you're also selling to the individuals or marketing to the individuals. And when they're partially work from home or potentially remote and work from home, we found that particularly in the case of direct mail, but even in digital overlays, we end up having to, market to them at their home address, not just their work address. And this is particularly true in direct mail, where I've got this, technology that puts a custom QR code to every recipient on every piece of direct mail so that it triggers a CRM, right? So we've found that appending on their home addresses onto for direct mailing purposes or for hyper geo targeting can actually be worth the time and worth the effort. In addition to that, are there any other things that have sort of changed, now that people are sometimes, only in Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, right? And
Yeah.
you have to market to them on Monday and Friday differently.
Absolutely. In fact, the beauty of the way 6sense was built is it really is built on our signal verse. Essentially, is not just looking at the overall account intent, but also the individual contact intent.
Right.
Almost no other B2B intent vendor is doing that. And when COVID hit, believe it or not, because our signal verse was already architected that way, we were able to very quickly, continue to capture on intent, whether a person is sitting in a coffee shop or at home or in their office, right? It's unique in the way that we really process the intent data and capture it, that we're able to do this at the individual level and then bubble it up to the overall account intent record. And so for us, that's been great. And it's very, minimally disruptive when COVID did hit. And then, of course, things like direct mail and whatnot, right? 6sense has contact data as well, and we work with vendors. So many great vendors are kind of solving for that in the sense that, you can send the gift via email, and then, people can put in their own address as well if they need to. But yeah, I mean, the world's changed. Luckily, 6sense was already built for that. And then, even with all those conversations around, the world going cookieless. Like we've been preparing for that for years. I know Google just made a decision that they're walking away from that, cookieless world. But either way, because of the way our Signalverse and our 6sense ID graph was set up, we were prepared regardless.
Right. So let's delve a little deeper into identity graphs. Obviously, they're the holy grail at the individual level to understand. And, folks on Firefox obviously have been sort of more separated from cookies for a long time. But there are other signals that sort of still continue to make themselves known, even in a third-party cookieless environment like Firefox or Safari. So just so that people understand sort of how the plumbing works without getting into anything proprietary, just so that people have confidence in the data. Sort of,
Yeah.
how do you guys append, information onto your identity graph and onto your sort of, scored lead or scored account basis to be able to have people feel like, okay, yeah, I can rely on this 6sense data.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kevin. I would say, our identity graph, our signal verse is what we call it, is really at the device level, which is, again, what makes it so unique and differentiated, right? And it doesn't matter where you are actually doing your research from or connecting from, we're able to tie that back. And then, of course, the biggest differentiator beyond that is the fact that we can then take those individual intent signals and really bubble it up to the account record. I would say put us up against any vendor. You know, we do match tests every day as part of our business. And time and time again, 6sense has consistently found and de-anonymized the most web traffic, versus our competitors. And that's the whole point at the end of the day. If you think about it, a great B2B website, 3 to 5% of people hitting that website are actually filling out a form and self-identifying. What about the other 97% of visitors and traffic? It is very meaningful to your buying journey, right? Any seller would want to know who is researching different pieces of content on your website. Which specific topics are they interested in? That is what the biggest unlock becomes, right? Forget everything else that, comes after, but really just step one is understanding who is on your website, what topics interest them, and what are they consuming? Whether that's on your website, by the way, or on 3.5 million other B2B websites. That de-anonymization is step one. And then when you know that, of course, you should be using that to personalize your outreach, right? You have this intelligence at your fingertips. Let's use it to personalize your outreach and meet that buyer where they are in their journey. So I would say, back to your question, put it down to, the device ID and really, getting down to specific of the people, and then bringing it and synthesizing it up to the account level. Because at the end of the day, as much as we'd like, to believe it, in the B2B side, you don't sell to a person, you're really selling to a buyer group. And so it's the combination of those signals at the account level that really allow you to prioritize those accounts and get them at the right time.
One other thing we've noticed in the last couple of years, and it's hard to gauge the exact momentum for it, but the idea that people in search experiences are starting to engage with chatbots as an alternative to a search engine results page. And a big chunk of, did its first business 27 years ago was in SEO, right? So the search engine results page has been front and center for organic search, paid search, et cetera. But we started to see people say, oh, yeah, I asked ChatGPT, or I asked Claude, or yeah, I was researching on Perplexity, or maybe they were in Google but saw one of the Gemini AI results. And that's a completely different algorithm. And for a lot of these platforms, especially the chatbot platforms, it's a winner take all, right? There's no SERP. It's just they ask a question and they get an answer. And so I've had people start to really ask me, well, how do I reverse engineer that? How do I take my web visibility beyond this idea of, oh, I've got my SEO for my website and I've got my visibility in the G2s and Capteras of the world, and then all these other B2B websites that I'd like to be talked about positively, right, with regards to my product or my service or my platform. And now they're saying, well, what do I do there? Have you seen any evidence as to sort of what percentage of buyers are starting to engage with chatbots in their buying journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the reality of the landscape that we're in, right? ChatGPT has changed everything. I have an SEO team that is, all over this stuff in terms of, making sure that our visibility is there. But I would go back to, we as B2B marketers and sellers need to be prepared for all of these inevitabilities. And a very simple example is, let's not gate everything. Why is everything behind a form that now, we've put another piece of friction or barrier in terms of educating that audience? And so it goes back to the very starting premise of 6sense, which if you have, if you've seen the book that our CRO, Latney Conant, wrote, it's literally titled No Forms, No Spam, No Cold Calls. And the goal is really to make sure that as those accounts are moving through that journey of education and driving awareness and understanding the solutions to problems that they're looking to solve, we're reducing points of friction. Whether it's on your website and they're searching for a piece of content, let's not gate it. Whether they're looking at G2, which, let's be honest, most buyers are doing some sort of community-based, research as well. Everyone trusts what their peers are saying, trusts what's out there. They're looking at analyst reports, right? And so that's a core kind of tenet of the way we like to market is let's make it really easy for those customers. And as they're in that first 70% of their journey and doing their research, and make it simple. And then, of course, we've got to show up where they are, whether they're doing search in Google and, you were running ads to them, whether they're doing it through chatbots, making sure that the right content reaches the right buyer at the right time.
Right. To some extent, the B2B marketer has a bit of an advantage over many of the B2C marketers, especially the good B2B marketers who understand that they need to have a lot of great content out there syndicated,
Yeah,
not just to get their own site to rank in a SERP, but also to, have all these other upper funnel touch points that are educational, because that's the content that the LLMs are ingesting in order
absolutely.
to probabilistically suggest something, right? And so the more stuff you have out there, the more you're slightly increasing your odds. There are obviously nuances to that, and I'm sure your SEO team, as my SEO team, are starting to really understand what those nuances are. But it looks sort of like digital PR and Barnacle SEO, and
Mhm.
there are some things that worked for many years that had other marketing benefits that are now showing to have direct influence on the chatbots. Um, so your team, your sales team in particular, probably finds, switching gears for a moment, probably finds that when they bring on a new B2B client, that there's some low-hanging fruit that will allow them to make some positive impact on revenue fairly quickly. Whereas if they want to have the nirvana of executing perfectly against ABM using your data set, that may take a little bit longer. What are some areas of low-hanging fruit where over and over again we sort of see things that people could do in the first couple of months and really move the needle?
Yeah, it's a great question. It goes back to a lot of what we spoke about, right? You have to use the intelligence that 6sense gives you to really meet your buyer where they are in that moment. And so, step one, let's just uncover who is researching on your website, right? Who is there? Either, by the way, if they're on your website anonymously or on other B2B websites doing research, let's just get that intelligence in the hands of the marketers and the sellers. What do they care about? What problems are they looking to solve? And then what stage of their journey are they in? Are they early awareness or are they actively comparing you to your competitors or in a buying cycle? If you just uncover that, of course, you would speak to those prospects very differently, right? On the marketing side, if you know who's in market, you might tailor your nurture campaigns very differently, right? You might have it be topic based or stage based. If you're a seller, you might not go after your entire list of 100 accounts. You might prioritize the 5 that are actually anonymously on your website or the 5 that are actually researching your competitor. So, step one is really unlocking that data and that intelligence, which is what 6sense does. And, you can do that on day one, really, of, putting our tag on your website. But then beyond that, it really then becomes how do you start to leverage that, whether it's in marketing programs, whether it's in sales programs. And I think the prioritization use case is really of primary importance to sellers and BDR teams, because as much as we'd like to think we can, you don't have capacity to go work every single account that's out there. So let's prioritize the ones and capitalize on that revenue moment as you see it. And then let's have marketing focus on warming up all the other accounts that aren't quite there yet, right? So there's the intelligence, there's the personalization, and then there's the automation behind it. And then finally, just I think, especially with go-to-market teams and, so much around marketing sourced versus sales sourced, or, who does what when. I think our platform really allows for clearer rules of engagement. When should sales get involved and how should they be doing it and what should they be talking about? When should marketing be taking the lead on warming up these early stage accounts? And sometimes that clarity, which takes
Mhm.
time to get, and I would say this is a later, maybe not day one, but a couple weeks in, the clarity is really key, because all of a sudden now you're operating as a unified go-to-market team as opposed to, marketing encroaching on what sales is doing, or sales, getting pissed off because marketing is reaching out to an account that they're actively working. And so I would say that's the nirvana, a unified go-to-market team around a single set of intent signals and working towards, that ICP.
Yeah, clearly in B2B, the lines are a little blurrier, right, between where marketing and sales handoffs occur with regards to an account and individuals as well. One other thing that is, I think, changed in the last 5 years, with regards to B2B in particular is this idea of fractional CMOs and fractional people, right?
Yeah.
It used to be that, when you were trying to target an organization and you were sort of creating your identity graph using either, using whichever platforms or just grunt work, right?
Yeah.
Just had to deal with people who were, visible within a LinkedIn or visible within, an organization, and they had their corporate email address, right? And so you could say like, okay, this person's legit, right? But now you've got these fractional people that come in just either because the company can't afford a full-timer CMO or full-timer VP of digital, or just because, it's a transition, stopgap, right? That they bring somebody in hypothetically for, 3 to 4 months while they find the new person for that role. And I would imagine those people have an outsized impact, both consultants and fractional people, in the decision-making process, and could sort of invisibly derail something, right? If you don't know that they're there. Any best practices around sort of that invisible layer, or more difficult to identify layer of fractional people?
Yeah, I think that's, why not just the quality of the signal and the intent data, but also the reliability and recency of it becomes really key. Our account records are refreshed every night. And so our sellers are alerted maybe if they're working an account and they see intent showing now from a new location, right? It might be anonymous. The fact that, again, maybe an account is surging from a new state, a new city, but the fact that the seller can see that and they can start to do some research on who might be involved or what content is being consumed and cast a wider net. It's that relevancy and the contextual nature of the intent data that again is tied to the account record that allows the sellers to capitalize on it. So I would say the recency and the quality of it, but also just how contextualized it is becomes critical. I have some great friends in the CMO world who are doing fractional work, and they absolutely do have an outsized impact, I would say, because they're in there for a short amount of time. They want to show impact. And so, continuing to work and partner with those folks and understanding how to solve their problems, because those are our target personas. It's really key to what 6sense does for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, One of the things that folks struggle with in B2B marketing is the sort of content type mix, right? And you'll see some marketers that you'll never see a piece of video from them. And
Yeah,
others are like, oh no, video allows me to do storytelling, and I love to use video and audio and other formats of content types. And then as far as what they do with those pieces of content, if they are investing in them, varies pretty dramatically. And there may not be a right or wrong answer. It may be specific to their industry, their sector, how their ICP engages with content. But I'd love to, hear from you what your thoughts are on evaluating the content mix, the content type mix. I mean, YouTube is the second largest search engine, right? And maybe that's
absolutely.
more true for B2C, but video content has its place.
Yeah. I am a fan of all different types of content because, again, our B2B buying group is so varied and fragmented. You want to be providing the right type of content to the right type of buyer at the end of the day. And so, whether it's a mix of short form, long form, videos, ads, I think it's important to test all of those. And now the data analytics person is going to come out again. I will always say, try it, measure it, and see what's working and what's resonating, right? If I go back to that closed one analysis that I run every single quarter, I'm able to see with the help of 6sense what ads those accounts engaged with, what videos they engaged with, what CRM campaigns they engaged with, what keywords they were researching. And so that really helps us put our budget into the different types of content that is resonating. I would say always test, have a measurement plan in place and absolutely test it. And there is no one size fits all. Beyond, by the way, the types of content and whether it's video, short form, long form, blogs, articles, whatever it is, the other point I would say is really map it to the journey, because a video might be really great, early stage awareness as you're looking to really capture attention. But as an account moves further down in their journey, they probably want to dive into some more details and understand the change management that will be required to bring a solution in place. And so I don't think it's one answer. I think it is all of it, making sure it's mapped to the journey, its relevance to the buyer, and then, of course, measuring where it makes sense to continue investing in a specific content type.
Right, right. Anything we should have discussed about best practices in B2B marketing that we didn't discuss earlier?
I think the piece that we haven't spoken about, Kevin, really is it's great to know the intelligence and know the data and know what's happening, personalizing your outreach. But at the end of the day, we all have a pipeline goal and we all have to scale. And so really making use of those signals and that intelligence to deliver a scaled experience is crucial. And of course, AI helps with that. AI helps you reach, and really curate the right communication for your prospects. And I wouldn't, discount that, because at the end of the day, you still have to create the pipeline. You still have to get in front of those buyers. And if your ICP is tens of thousands of accounts, let's make sure you're still using the great principles of account-based experience to deliver that personalized experience at scale. It's not just a one-to-one.
Yeah. Final question is really about sort of sales cycle as it relates to uncertainty. That could be economic uncertainty. It could be geopolitical uncertainty.
Yeah.
Election years may change the dynamic and lengthen sales cycle, as do, fears of recession, for example. And how do you recommend that B2B marketing teams deal with the fact that maybe the sales cycle isn't looking like it's normally? I mean, it would seem like the sky is falling, right? If your, average time to close is getting kicked out further into the future, panic ensues, right? But it may not, it may just be a byproduct of something more macro that you can't control. So for folks who are sort of potentially dealing with macro issues, particularly for large capital expenditures or things that have, sensitivity to interest rates, sensitivity to, recessionary situations, how should they work through and feel confident that they're still doing the right thing?
Yeah, I mean, we're all feeling it, right? A lot of the macro environment is impacting the way we're buying and selling. I mentioned B2B inflation earlier on in this podcast, right? It's getting harder and harder to win these deals. It's taking more people. It is taking more oversight on the buying side. Buyers are demanding more personalized touches than they were in the past. And so we have this saying at 6sense that it's a mantra that my team lives by. Ideas are easy, execution is everything. And so in a macro environment where there's things you can't control, let's execute to perfection on the things that you can control, right? And what does that mean for us? How does that manifest itself? Using the intelligence and the signals to provide a really personalized and curated journey to all of our prospects. Honing in on that ICP, right? We can't waste our dollars on accounts that might be showing signal but aren't really a great fit for us. Honing in on sales execution and that handoff between marketing and sales, right? When marketing's done all this work to drive up demand into an account, is sales capitalizing on it quickly and meaningfully in the right way, right? What is the quality of that outreach? What is the timing of that outreach? What is the relevance of that outreach? Is sales doing that? Is marketing providing air cover to sales on those deals as they're working them, right? So really, again, making sure that entire go-to-market team is executing to perfection, working in tandem in a really orchestrated way. We like to call it orchestrating winning. And then again, honing in on the data to find those patterns that are driving results and are delivering on wins. Let's go back and recreate more of those patterns as opposed to going off and trying net new things. So it always kind of let's tie it back into the measurement of what is working, and let's make sure we're doing more of that.
That's great advice. Thanks so much for joining me on the podcast. Lots of pearls of wisdom to share with our audience about best practices in B2B marketing.
Thanks, Kevin. And, for folks who are interested, 6sense's Breakthrough Conference is in Las Vegas from October 7th and 2024. We'd love to have anyone join.
Great. Thanks for the invitation.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, If Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.